The moment that changed everything arrived like a thunderclap on an ordinary afternoon, the kind of moment that splits a life into before and after. 1 second I was standing at the edge of my dignity, exhausted and invisible, and the next second the air itself felt electric with a threat that sounded final, sharp, and unforgiving. It felt like the world had stopped breathing, waiting to see whether I would retreat or finally move forward, even if that step cost me everything I thought I needed to survive. Before the story pulls you any deeper, let me ask you something from the heart. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the idea that broken moments can turn into beautiful beginnings, please take a second to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Your support helps stories like this reach the people who need them most. My name is Daniel Carter, and for most of my adult life, I had mastered the art of being silent. Silence at work, silence at home, silence in my own dreams. I worked as a senior project analyst at a high-rise consulting firm where glass walls reflected success I never felt was mine. Every morning I wore the same gray suit, the same careful smile, and the same fear that one wrong move would send me back to nothing. I had grown up with very little, raised by a mother who worked double shifts and taught me that survival came before happiness. That lesson followed me everywhere, especially into the office of my boss, Evelyn Ross. Evelyn Ross was known throughout the company as brilliant, ruthless, and untouchable. She was in her early 40s, always impeccably dressed, her dark hair pulled back with surgical precision, her presence commanding silence without effort. People admired her from a distance and feared her up close. I had worked under her for 3 years, and in that time, I had learned every one of her moods by the sound of her footsteps and the tension in the air around her. She pushed harder than anyone I had ever known, demanded perfection, and never apologized. Yet beneath that iron exterior, there was something else I noticed in quiet moments, something lonely and tired that mirrored my own reflection when the office lights went dim. The pressure reached its breaking point during a project that was doomed from the start. Unrealistic deadlines, shifting expectations, and a leadership team that wanted miracles without giving resources. I worked late nights, missed family gatherings, and slept with my laptop open beside me like a lifeline. My health suffered, my patience thinned, and still it was never enough. Each mistake felt like a personal failure, and each correction felt like a reminder that I was replaceable. That afternoon, the tension finally snapped. A presentation had gone wrong, not because of incompetence, but because of impossible demands and a lack of communication that flowed downhill like blame. I stood near the conference room doors, heart pounding, hands shaking, listening to the weight of authority crashing down on me. In that moment, something inside me broke open. Not anger, not rebellion, but a sudden, overwhelming clarity. I realized that I had been walking backward my entire life, afraid of losing approval, afraid of conflict, afraid of being seen. When I stepped forward, it was not an act of defiance born from arrogance. It was an act of surrender to truth. The kiss that followed was not impulsive or careless. It was a human response to years of unspoken emotion, mutual frustration, and a connection neither of us had dared to acknowledge. It was brief, sincere, and full of everything words had failed to express. Time seemed to fold in on itself, and for a heartbeat, there were no titles, no threats, no consequences, only two people standing face to face with their own loneliness. The fallout was immediate and intense. The office became a storm of whispers and sideways glances. Human resources intervened, policies were reviewed, and I was asked to take a leave of absence while the company assessed the situation. Friends warned me that my career was over. My mother worried that I had thrown away stability for a moment of madness. Alone in my apartment, I replayed that moment again and again, questioning whether courage and recklessness were sometimes the same thing. During that forced distance, something unexpected happened. Evelyn reached out, not as a boss, but as a woman who had spent her life building walls higher than any office tower. Without excuses or authority, she acknowledged her part in the imbalance, the pressure, and the fear that had defined our working relationship. She spoke of her own sacrifices, the relationships she had lost climbing toward a version of success that never quite felt like home. In that shared vulnerability, the power dynamic dissolved, replaced by honesty and accountability. The company eventually made its decision. I returned, not under Evelyn's direct supervision, but in a different department, with clear boundaries and renewed respect. Evelyn took a temporary step back from leadership to address the culture she had helped create. It was not a fairy tale resolution, but it was real, grounded in consequences and growth. We began again slowly, carefully, learning who we were without titles attached to our names. What changed most was not our relationship, but my relationship with myself. I stopped shrinking. I spoke up when something was wrong. I allowed myself to imagine a future that included joy, not just survival. Evelyn, too, softened in ways the office noticed but could not explain. Productivity improved, morale lifted, and the fear that once ruled those glass corridors began to fade. Years later, when I look back on that moment, I do not see scandal or risk. I see a turning point where fear lost its grip. I see two flawed people choosing honesty over safety. Life did not become perfect, but it became authentic, and that made all the difference. If this story has reached something tender inside you, if it reminded you of a moment when you wished you had been braver or kinder or more honest, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe. Your engagement tells us that stories like this matter and that human connection still has power. And before this story quietly settles into your heart, I want to ask you something personal. Please comment below and tell us about a moment in your life when one small step changed everything, even if it scared you. Because sometimes, the step that feels like the end of everything is actually the first step toward becoming who you were always meant to be.